Um, Hello? Hi? Are you there? I hope so. Hey, hi. Hi everyone. I'm I'm here with another stream today. We're going to continue to work on Tempest. That's right, the framework that we're building from scratch. We already did a stream 2 days ago, and quite a lot of people seemed to like it. So here we are. I'm looking forward to it. Today we're building the V in MVC, view layer. We already worked on the C, the controller, the routing in the previous stream, and yeah, today is template time, I would say. Um, Before doing that, though, I have to quickly run you through all the changes I made off stream because I did quite a lot of things in the evenings and during the weekend actually before I did my last stream. So let me quickly run you through here. So a couple of changes. Let's maybe start in our HTTP folder. You can see there are a couple of more classes, but I think most will be self-explanatory. We made our generic router 2 days ago, and I added a couple of methods. We have our resolve params function here. That's the same. I don't think anything changed here. This is the method that matches routes and pulls out variable data from it. We now also have a toURI method, basically, so that I can say toURI controller class and give it parameters. I can write again, something like this, right? But that's nothing too interesting here. Our dispatch method, it changed quite a bit. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, instead of remember we looped over our controllers, our registered controllers here. I pulled that out and I moved all these controllers and URI mappings to an array for now. And the reason here is that because I want to be able to cache this array, because basically we're going to loop over all loop over all controllers and methods and scan for attributes. And yeah, we don't want to be bothered with doing that every single time on every request. So this is something we'll still have to cache. Let's take a look. For the rest, our dispatch method didn't really change that much. Maybe moving some things around. But what's important here is our call method on the container. We're using the container to call a method on the controller. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to be able to inject dependencies into our controller methods. And let me actually show you an example of that in on my main branch. For example, I have a post request here. We're not going to look too much into that today, but basically, these are going to be request classes in Tempest. And validation is going to use the type system. And if you need other kinds of validation, you can use attributes, something like length and min 10, max, something like this, for example. And the benefit of these kinds of request classes is that you don't have to do any kind of mapping. Tempest will do that for you. But that's not what I wanted to show you. If you go to post controller here, you can see we inject this request into our controller, and that's why we basically need to be able to use the container to call these controller methods. That's all I have to explain about that. Of course, it also means that some things changed in our container compared to what we did previously. Let me quickly go through the interface here. Things might change here still a little bit, but we have our register and singleton methods, also a config, which is basically just a shorthand for singleton for config classes. I might actually remove this from the interface. The get method, you already know that, and now there's the call method. And finally, and this is an important one, initializers. Now, initializers in Tempest are classes that can initialize dependencies in cases where you need quite a lot of code to initialize a dependency. And one good example is the request initializer, because remember we have a generic request class, but we also we want our custom request classes, and we want them to be able to be injected via the container. So these initializers, they have a little more flexibility. The container will ask any initializer, hey, can you instantiate this class for me? So let's say, for example, post request here. And in this case, post request implements request. So this initializer will tell the container, yes, I can do that. Use me, please. And then it will do a bit of logic here to map data onto the properties of the request, stuff like that. I use the same principle for the route initializer, which this is the place where we'll loop over the controllers that we configured beforehand. We register them into the router and register a singleton instance into the router as well. I have this register controller method on the router. I actually think I will move this to the initializer instead. But the reasoning here is that, again, we can use proper caching so that we don't have to be bothered with doing like the same logic with every request. So those are initializers. That is something that changed, and that's important. But apart from that, oh, maybe one more thing to mention, our HTTP application here. It's basically the entry point for our framework. It has one method, the run method, and you can see in our index.php here, we create an instance of HTTP application. We pass it the root of our application code, and we call run, and the application will set up everything for us behind the scenes. It uses a kernel internally, and the reason for that is because we want to be able to mock that kernel in our tests. So yeah, but basically this is the boring part. I want to talk about views today and being able to actually render something. So let's take a look here. We have a home controller which maps to this URI, and right now it returns a response. You can see it over here. Of course, we want to be able to return HTML, right? And in order to do that, we'll have to use some kind of templating engine, because we really don't want to be bothered writing HTML in our PHP code all the time. Now, we're building things from scratch, so we'll have to come up with a solution here. There are, of course, a couple of popular templating engines available, but we don't want to use those. And there's one big problem with them, actually, if we want to take the same approach. And the problem here is that templating engines like Blade and Twig, they introduce custom syntax. They are a language on their own. And in order to understand a language on their own, we'll have to be able to write, I don't know, some kind of language server or a plugin for it to work in IDEs. And if you know me, you know that I prefer like a more typed approach to programming. I like static insights. I like to be able to have auto-completion wherever it makes sense. So yeah, we have to think about that. We kind of want to invent a new templating engine language, but we also want to have auto-completion and static insights wherever possible. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little templating engine called PHP to do exactly that. And I'll try to make it as user-friendly as possible. So yeah, that's kind of the setup here. We start, as always, with an interface, right? And I'm going to use the term view because it's MVC, and I don't want to use template because you have to mentally map like the concept of template to view. So I think view is a little bit better. And I'm going to do something kind of strange, maybe. I'm going to have the view render itself, and there's a very good reason to do that, which I'm going to explain a bit later. So this render function, it takes app-config, and there's only one thing in app-config, it's the root path, which is exactly what we need, because we'll have to be able to require or include PHP files relative to our root path, basically. Okay, this is enough for now. Let's create a new namespace here, view, and a class generic view. I'm going to apply the same pattern I've been using all throughout Tempest, and that's to create a base view trait, because I don't want to use abstract classes or extents. That's a topic that I've discussed previously. I'm not going to go into that again today. So our generic view will use our trait, and that's basically it. Okay, let's implement everything in our trait now. So a view, it has a path, right? It has a path to a view that should be rendered. It has an array of parameters, right? And it also is possible to extend another view, right? Because you don't want to repeat your whole HTML boilerplate setup with every view, basically. Okay, let's maybe wrap all of that into a constructor for now, because why not? Like so. By the way, I really hope you don't hear the sound in the background. My neighbors are doing construction work, and yeah, it is what it is. Okay, let's implement our render function. It took app-config, and it would return a string, the rendered string, right? First of all, we'll have to map this path to this path, right? And let's go to our home controller. Let's comment this out, and let's say we'll return a view, return new generic view. For now, we'll make this easier. Let's say path, and paths are relative to our app directory. So in this case, actually, let me let's I pressed the wrong button. Let's let's do it like this. So the view will be in modules home, and let's call it home.php. And let's also create it over here. I have a very different way of structuring my code. I like to keep things together in modules instead of like controllers separately and views separately. We can you can choose entirely how you want to structure your code here with Tempest. It doesn't matter. Okay, so for now we're going to return a generic view with a path, and let's just write some HTML here because that's possible in PHP. Let's say hi. Okay, for now we want to be able to render this basically. So let's oh, I am doing some strange things. Let's resolve our path, which I have a helper function for, I think. Yeah. This function basically filters out double slashes and stuff like that, so I don't have to worry about it. So path, and let's also create a test here. Yeah, sure. Let's call it test view. Again, I don't really care about test name functions at this point. Let's say generic view no, let's say view is new generic view. Basically copy over what we had from our controller. Like so. And we're going to want to render it. View render, I have to import the right test case here. This container get app config. Right. And I don't know what we're expecting here. So let's run this test. And of course it's going to fail. Read-only class. Oh yeah, I should probably remove read-only here. That makes sense. Good. Yeah, okay. We're fine. Okay, so we have our path. And this, well, let me actually double check. Yeah, this is the right path. That's good. And now we want to basically include this path as the contents of our render template. This is basically going to be the thing we're going to return from this function. But how do we do that in PHP? Well, you can include basically a path, but it will directly output it to basically, it will echo it. However, I'm not sure. It should be somewhere here. Let me actually check. Bin. Oh yeah, look, it outputs it here. I don't know why this happens, but in the PHP Storm output, it's filtered out. So when you include something, PHP will simply echo the result unless you return something from the file. But we really don't want to do this. This is like a template file. We don't want to be bothered returning anything from it. It's just HTML with a bit of our templating language, PHP, sprinkled in. So what you can do is call ob_start, which is output buffer. And it basically means that PHP won't output anything, and it will store it internally. And once you're done, you can call ob end, and let me think, it's clean. So this function will return whatever in the buffer. It will also end buffering, and it will clean the buffer. You could also call flush, which means the contents would be like flushed and echoed out to the user, which is what we don't want. So if we write content here, and let's try it out, that should not work, I guess. It returns true. That's I wrote a mistake, of course. Okay, here's our content. Did someone tell me that in chat? No. Okay, it's get clean, of course, which will also end the output buffer, I think. Get current buffer and delete current output buffer. Let's say op end as well. Let's do it like this, just to be sure that the output buffer is closed again, because otherwise it might still be open. So, okay, we have our contents, right? And we can return it. Okay, let's assert same here. It was something like this, I think. HTML. And okay. I shouldn't have done this. Okay, my test works. Perfect. Now, there are a couple of things we still need to change here, because we want to be able to like render dynamic data, right? Render data from within PHP. Now, the interesting part here, if you include a path right here, it will act like that code is running at this place right here. So that means it's running in a class, a view class in this case, the base view trait, the generic view that we have available. And well, it has access to this params array. So what if we pass some params here, say name is Brent, okay, and let's go to our, I lost it, it's home.php. Let's go here and let's actually echo that out. This params, because remember it is like we are in this class. Let's do it like this. Let's run our test. Okay, see the difference? Oh yeah, look, it's there's Brent over here. So that's pretty cool. Now, what's missing here is a proper static insights. But this is a PHP file, right? So what we can do is just write one single hint, generic add var generic view, and say this is an instance of generic view. And let's close this again. So if we do it like this now, look at that. We have our params available. Okay, pretty cool. Let's rerun our test, and of course it will keep failing. Let's move this to over here, and maybe also convert it to a short echo statement like this. And our expected should be hi Brent. Let's run our tests. It's still different. It probably has to do with white. Oh yeah. Yes. You know, I'm just going to add like an enter here. Does this work? Yes. Okay. We can trim data later, but it shouldn't really matter that much. Okay. Okay, so this is a basic template engine, right? We want to improve it quite a lot. But let me go check the comments first. Here someone says clean it up and edit it and put it into a course. Yeah, I know that takes quite a lot of work, and I would like to work on writing this framework at the moment, but I might do it in the future. And oh, it looks like Ricardo actually has the same idea as I, which is great. We're going to improve on it quite a bit now. Okay, so yeah, because writing this params is quite cumbersome. So let's first add a magic getter here, which returns this params name, and if it doesn't exist, it will return null, something like this. Okay. So that means we can write this name now, and our test should still work. However, the problem here is that, yeah, we don't have static insights because this is magic. So how do we solve this? Well, here comes what I like the most about this setup. You can use this approach for like basic views. It might be good enough. But I would like to introduce a concept called view models. These are just view classes. Let me show you. So home view implements view, and let's use our base view as well, so that we don't have to re-implement render method. Okay, let's say we override the construct here. We'll have to make a couple of changes to our base view in order to have this work. Let's say we say string name. Like this. Okay, public string name. And let's say we set the path to what was it? Modules home like this. Okay. And what happens if we now use this file as our view, and we only have to pass in name, right? Name is Brent. So what happens now? Let's not change anything else besides this. Oh, and I render the read-only class again. And let's rerun our tests. Let's see the difference here. Oh, it doesn't render anything. That's kind of anticlimactic, actually. I thought it would work. Let's take a look at why it doesn't happen. So maybe actually let's use a debugger for once. Just to change things up a little bit. So path is app. We move out of config. I don't know why we're in config. It doesn't matter because I wrote the wrong path basically. No, I didn't. Where does models home come from? Modules home. And now it works. Okay, that was a stupid mistake. Great. No, but this works, right? Because we implement our view, we use our base view trait, and besides that, we've set the path manually from the inside out, because this home view class represents basically this path, and that's all we had to change. But now the difference, of course, if we change our doc block here to home view, because this is now a home view, right? What happens now? If I can write correctly, name. Isn't that cool? And we can do whatever we want in this class. We could add, I don't know, a function, current date. That's probably not too difficult, but we could have calculated properties here. 2021. This is not the current date, but we could use it. Oh, this is unable to write. Okay. This current date. We can just call this method here, right? Because we're in a PHP file and we have autocompletion on it. That's, I would say, pretty cool. Of course, our test fails now, but here's our current date. Okay, but we're not done yet, right? Thank you, by the way, Benjamin, for pointing out my mistake. My chat isn't open all the time, so I often am a bit late here. And also, there's a question here. So Lim asks, a quick question: in what situation would you suggest to use type hints instead of PHP doc whenever possible? Basically, only use PHP docs when type hints don't suffice. And in this case, we do need to use PHP doc. Yeah, but use PHP's types as much as possible. Okay, good. There's one important thing still missing here, of course, and that's to be able to extend from other views, because like I said, you don't want to write like the whole HTML stuff over and over again. Let's create a PHP file here. Let's call it index or base. I don't know. Let's use base. And over here, the only thing we need to do is like declare a variable here to get auto completion. My microphone is really in the way today. Let's say yeah, this is an HTML file now. Oh, I should close my tag. HTML head title hi body, if I can remember correctly. Okay. Yeah, sure. And let's say there's an H1 here, title, something like this. Okay, we want to extend this base template from within our home template, right? But of course we have view models now, so let's do it that way first. This extends. Remember, we had this parameter here already in place. Modules. No, not modules. In this case, view base.php. Okay, so this is our extends set. So what do we do with it now? Let's go back to our render function. So we get our contents from the render template. But now basically we want to move those contents into this base template, and we want to move it at a specific point. So let's say let's introduce like a magic variable called slot. Okay. Oh, and it should of course be this slot, right? Okay, and let's move back to our base view. So if we extend from another template, we will return a new generic view, in this case. The template path, like the path, what should I, path is the extend path, right? And as params, we'll say slot, and we'll use the contents of our previously rendered thing. I'm totally lost. I have to call render here, basically, and then it's fine. And we'll have to re-render it. And this is the thing we're going to return. So basically we've wrapped our previous template into a new template, and we pass it this magic variable slot with our previously rendered template, and we're going to render it again. Okay, so let's run our test. It's going to fail, but let's take a look at what it looks like. So we have our HTML here, and we have our slot being filled in, right? That's pretty cool. Let's just copy all of this over, because I think it's correct. And let's do it like this. And run our tests, and it's probably white spacing. Once again, let's just call trim here. I'm not sure how I want to handle trimming, so for now, let's just do it like this. Okay, perfect. So this is pretty cool. And now, in case that you're using like a not a view model, but just the generic view, you can still access this extends from here. So you can write whatever you want. What was it? Not modules, view base, basically. So you could write this in your generic views and still extend from templates. Although I will probably only use view models, because I just like a little bit more insights into everything. Okay. So let's go back to chat for a second. Does using type hints slow down the app or her performance? Is it runtime type checking? No, it doesn't. It's just a comment. Benjamin also said that. It doesn't affect a runtime type checking at all. It only affects static analyzers and IDEs like PHP Storm. So in a way, it impacts performance there, but it's just negligible. That's a difficult word. So yeah, but I would argue that static insights is quite important when it comes to programming, because like I'm writing code here, and it's very nice to be able to see what's available to me and not having to think about it or having to look it up, stuff like that. So yeah, good. Okay, let's take a second here to maybe discuss the API of what we've built. Because I think it would be nice still to be able, if you're using generic views, that you don't have to write stuff like this. I prefer like more shorthand function. I do already have like a couple of functions here. Let's make a function view, and it only takes a path and it returns a view, right? And it will return new generic view path. Okay, that's good. And okay, that's basically everything we need here, I think. Let's go to our controller. Let's say return view modules. By the way, we can use the same template without its view model. We could use it directly, but we would have to pass in data, right? But I wanted to have a more convenient method here instead of passing an array all the time. Let's go to our view template. Let's say data, it returns self, and it gathers params like this. Let's say data params and return self. And we'll loop. Now we don't have to loop. We'll say this params equals params. So let's just merge these two together, right? That's looking good. So now we can write stuff like this in our controller: data name Brent. Okay. Let's actually view this in the browser. Uh-oh. Oh, of course, we forgot a very important part. We're returning a view here from our controller, but our router is actually only able to work with responses. Let's go to our generic router. Let's scroll down here. And well, I actually had the code in place already. So let's go here. We get output from a controller, could be anything, right? But it should be something, otherwise we throw this exception. And then we create a response from it. So in this case, let's only support responses and views. In case that it is a view object, we'll have to convert it to a response. And we do that by calling the render method into our app config and creating a response from it. And this, by the way, is just a function that returns a generic response for now. We could do a whole lot of things there as well in the future. So, okay, that's it fixed. And the reason it didn't work, by the way, is because I had here contents here. Initially, the render method returned a rendered view object with a contents property. I don't know if I want to keep that. I think string is good enough for now, at least. But here we are, hi Brent, that's pretty cool. Let's do it like this, just to see everything come together. String name like that. It doesn't work, of course. Hi, I don't know, Jim. Hi, Jim. Pretty nice. And of course, one important thing here that we're not doing is escaping data. That should probably be done because let's say I write script alert. It didn't do anything, but let's take a look at my elements here. It didn't do anything because it didn't. My route matching isn't able to handle this. But still, let's move it to our controller. Yeah, like so. It still doesn't do anything. That's because I'm at the wrong URI. Okay, here's our injected code. Yeah, we don't want that. So all of our params should be properly escaped. Basically, that's what we need to do. And we have to escape them before setting or writing them, actually, because, well, that's interesting. In some cases, you do want unescaped values in your HTML, right? So if we change them before writing them over here, yeah, that's going to cause issues. So that's actually an interesting thing, design decision here. My guess would be is that we keep both the escaped and the unescaped versions, and by default we use the unescaped versions, but we also provide a method like raw, for example, string name, and it will return this unescaped name or null, something like that, right? Will that work? Yes, it will work as long as we loop over all our parameters here. We will also have our data function, so we have to loop over them as well. So let's write a function here called, it can be private actually, escape, mixed input. Well, actually, items, let's do it like this, because I don't want to manually loop over them all the time. So escaped is an empty array. We loop over our items, name a value, we return escaped, and let's say escaped name equals, I don't know, is it HTML entities? I'll have to look that up, but let's assume HTML entities works fine for now. It returns an array, of course, and let's now call it. So anytime we add parameters here, I have to call this escape. Yeah, that's good. And when constructing, we'll also have to call, say, this params equals this escape params. Okay. This raw is just this params. And let's add the property here like this. I'm going to have to clean this up quite a bit, I think. Also, I wrote the wrong thing here. Params. I think this is better anyway. And in this case, we want this raw equals params and this raw like this. Okay, and so when we call raw, I call it raw. It's such a strange word. Raw. Okay. Does that work? I don't know. Yeah, it does. And when we call, I still have to make it so that you can click here, by the way. That should work. It's a config thing. This raw, and then, oh yeah, we pass in name. You lose autocompletion here. And then, okay. It would be cool if this worked. I need to think about that. I can probably make that work, but not now. But at least now we are safe. I think so. I have to do some reading about proper escaping in HTML, but this is a good start, basically. Let's just keep it that way. Okay. I think let's check out comments for a second. Benjamin is waiting for generics. You're not the only one, Benjamin. You're not the only one. If PHP would get generics, it would be the perfect language. I wouldn't say perfect, but it would be a bit better, definitely. Daryl is, thank you, Daryl. You're complimenting my PHP Storm UI. I'm just using the new UI, by the way. It's available since 2 releases, I think. It's still in beta. You just click enable new UI, and yeah, it looks a lot better. Let's take a look at a couple of other comments. Rob is talking about runtime safety. Rob, that's an interesting question. We could have a whole talk about that. Runtime type safety is very much overestimated, I would say. If you have a proper static type checker, you do not need runtime type checks. PHP uses runtime types for other things than its type checker. It uses it to convert, to type juggle, basically to convert, for example, a string to an integer. And it also uses it to optimize certain parts of your code. So it's not useless, but I cannot remember the last time I had a runtime type error because I use like static analysis and an IDE. So just want to put that out there. There's a lot more to say about it. Might be an interesting topic for a video on this channel. Let's take a look at our comments. Lars is asking, Lars, hi Lars, will you also be building a database interface? Yes, I will, and it's actually the next big thing on my list, and I am still very much uncertain how I have to build it. Not necessarily from a technical point of view, but how it will look. I'm pretty sure that I want to use, I don't want to build a fully fledged query builder. I want to use SQL because I think that's a pretty good query language, and I don't want to be bothered with translating stuff back and forth. But like data mapping onto objects, that's the big question. And of course, persisting back to the database is also quite a big question. Migrations, but migrations, I'm pretty sure those won't be the big problem here. Yeah, it's actually something we'll need to discuss. Basically, I'm going to ask on Twitter some input, so you can follow me over there if you want to, yeah, pitch in, because I have a couple of ideas, but I'm not sure yet. So let's continue. I'm just scanning through the comments here. Unknown asks, why not escaping the raw method? Because you can't really de-escape, I think. Well, is that possible? Like HTML and entities. There's HTML entity decode, and there's HTML special charge. I really need to read up on this. I don't know which does what, and it seems like PHP has an amazing API for it, as always. But it's a very good suggestion. I'm going to dive into this off stream a little bit more, probably. But thanks for that. So let's take a look. Someone has a love-hate relationship with TypeScript. I understand. I also have that with PHP, but you know, it gets the job done. Okay, you're just you're answering my rant here. Okay, so let's summarize here before we end stream. We've built a basic view layer, and our views are rendered with a pretty simple render function here. We're using PHP as our templating language, which ironically is the way PHP originated, of course. It makes it so that we have a bit more auto-completion if we use view models, which I really like. So I think personally that's worth like the overhead. Ideally, we would have a proper templating language with custom syntax that's available in IDEs and static analyzers understand it. Yeah, that's kind of out of the scope for this project at the moment. So, but yeah, I like where we got with this. So I think, yeah, I think we covered everything I wanted to. So that means we're going to conclude over here. I want to thank you for watching. Once again, please share this video with your peoples everywhere if you want to. I would love to get some more input. I actually noticed that the previous stream got quite a lot of views the days after, and some people pitched into the comments as well, which is really nice. You can always do that. This video will just be available on the channel. Leave a like, that helps out. Thanks for being in chat, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye bye.